Good morning, St. Francis, and good morning, people of God. It is Monday, the 11th day of September, 2023, Monday of the 23rd week of the year, the 23rd week in Ordinary Time. Today, because it is September the 11th, we do remember all of those whose lives were affected and continue to be affected by the events that happened on the morning of that day 22 years ago. In today's readings, we have the continuation of Paul's letter to the Colossians, in which Paul loves talking about himself. So he talks about what it is that he's doing. Again, there's not a lot of theology. If you really look at the letters that Paul writes, there isn't a lot of theology that he gives, in understanding who Christ is and why lives are different because of Christ's appearance and the effect, the continuing effect that Christ continues to have on our human lives and our human history. Basically, Paul just talks about himself and what he is doing, which is interesting because he is echoing and affirming work that is already being done by others, in these places to which he writes. So he is not necessarily bringing the gospel to them in as much as he is affirming others who have brought the gospel to these people. Now, who are these people? Well, again, they are the great unnamed. Some people come with Paul. Some people are sent by Paul to these places, but they are not the ones who begin the planting of the seeds of the gospels in these places. That's always being done by people whose names are not recorded in history, are not recorded in the Gospels. So it's always a wonder to who those people were. But Paul comes to affirm this and basically, again, say what has been planted in them must continue to grow, and that is grown to understanding wisdom and to understanding the truth about ourselves and our human history, and that Paul will not stop laboring until everyone understands and knows who Christ is. And again, it realizes the fact that the spreading of the gospel is an exercise. It is a labor. It is something that is not always easy, and something that is not, for the weak of heart, or for the passive, even, or for those who are mild mannered. Now, it doesn't mean that you shove the gospel down people's throats, but you have to present it in a way in which the gospel is seen as viable, as relevant, as practical, as something that makes sense in the world in which people live. And that's important in any day or age. For people who want to evangelize, who want to spread the gospel. It is interesting that he talks about the church in Laodicea, or Laodicea, however you want to pronounce it. Again, another city on the Aegean coast, but there is no letter to the Laodiceans or Laodiceans or whatever it is. But I guess they were having struggles there too, or if there was a letter, it's lost to history. But they were having struggles there too. And, Paul, again, prays for the continuation of the spread of the gospel, again, being done by others and not necessarily by Paul himself firsthand or by Paul himself alone. Which always helps us remember that the spreading of the gospel is the work of everyone, and not just priests and nuns and quote unquote holy people or pious people or whatever it is. Because sometimes the holy people and pious people are too passive and too much locked into their own adorations and devotions to be able to be useful to be spreading the gospel. So remember, it is all our work. It is all our work. Everyone who believes is called to be able to spread something of the gospel, to others, to help them realize that there is a usefulness, a purpose, and a relevance to what it is that Jesus says to us today and always. In the gospel, again, a very practical kind of point that Jesus makes in healing a man's hand who has been withered. Again, what does a withered hand look like? It's never really certain what that is, but a man's hand is withered. It is the Sabbath. He wants to be healed. Should he heal him? The scribes and the Pharisees, again, that would be a labor on the Sabbath, which one is not supposed to do. And Jesus is like, this man is hurting and you basically can cure it, and you would refuse to do it because you are following a law that is not meant to be interpreted in the way that you are interpreting it. And so basically he says, is it lawful to do bad or to do good on the Sabbath? And it's like, and they don't say anything to him because they know that he has entrapped them in their stupidity, because they would rather listen to rules and regulations than to the yearnings of the human heart, or what we need as human beings. And he goes and heals the man, and it's like, and who cares, about what it is the scribes and Pharisees think. Again, we live in a church sometimes that is so wrapped up in rules and regulations that it loses the heart, of the people who are involved in these things. And again, law is made for people, not people for the law. And we have to remember that, especially within our church, that thinks it can keep order, that thinks it can keep a status quo, that thinks it can keep stability and control or whatever it is by following more rules that we have made up as human beings, rather than the rule that basically Jesus set out, which was to love and never stop loving and never let anything stand in the way of love. If we become people of the rule and people of the law only, then we will become people who die, whose lives are left empty and void and negligent because negligible because there is nothing there. There is nothing there to live on. There is nothing there to believe in. There is nothing there to give life, because the law does not give life. Love gives life, and love is God. And if God is love and God gives life, then we have to abide by that rule and that rule only. A blessed day, St. Francis and people of God. May the Lord give you his peace.